Micah Lane had no business being on the marble floor of the Grand Hall of Mixter Prime. Not because he was human, though that was reason enough for half the galaxy. Not because he was a civilian, or a logistics aide, or a last-minute replacement waiter for the Terran diplomatic team. But because this floor was sacred. Reserved for nobility, carved from the heartwood of an extinct star tree. On it, no outsider had ever walked. And no one, ever, had dared offer a hand to the Athari heir. Until now. Micah's steps were deliberate. Polished shoes clicked softly against the glowing inlays beneath him, each step echoing louder than any voice. His black serving uniform bore no insignia. No rank. He wasn't a diplomat. He wasn't a soldier. He was just a man who saw a girl sitting alone. And couldn't stay silent. Across the chamber, the Athari nobles froze mid-motion. Their six-fingered hands trembled around crystalline wine flutes. Their neck crests tightened in warning. The orchestra, genetically bred for perfection, never missed a note, but tension crept into the tempo. Micah reached the base of the throne. The girl was smaller than the rest, slighter, with silver-tinted eyes and chrome limbs polished to ceremonial sheen. She sat rigid in a hovering throne, not at its center, but tucked beside the Empress's dais. Out of focus. Like furniture. The Athari never named imperfections aloud. But everyone knew who she was. Princess Aelith, the only daughter of Empress Syraxa IX. Born with defects. Kept from the public, spoken of in hushed tones. Micah bowed, not deeply, just respectfully. Then, he extended a hand. "Would you," he said gently, "honor me with a dance?" The silence cracked like a bone. High above, from her obsidian dais, Empress Syraxa did not rise. She did not speak. But her expression hardened, slight as frost, enough to chill the entire chamber. No one dared intervene. Not when her daughter, motionless at first, slowly reached out with a trembling mechanical hand. The orchestra faltered for just a second. Then adjusted. The waltz began again. Micah stepped forward. He moved gently, offering the rhythm without forcing it. He let her lead, if she chose to. When her foot slid forward, hesitant and unsure, he matched her with care. He didn't see a princess. He saw a person, nervous, curious, alive. She didn't smile. Not at first. But her grip tightened. Her gaze met his. Her shoulders relaxed. For the first time in her life, she was being seen. Around them, the court watched in stunned silence. Not just because a human had touched the princess, but because she had responded. No translator bot announced the moment. No envoy explained it. But something unspoken rippled across the room. Change. Micah said nothing as they danced. He let the silence speak louder. But when the music slowed, he whispered, "You're doing perfectly." Aelith blinked. Her voice was nearly inaudible. "I never have." "You are now." A tremble passed through her frame, but it wasn't fear. The final chord held in the air like a prayer. And then, applause. Hesitant. Scattered. But real. One of the nobles, older, scales dulled with age, stood and tapped her cane against the floor 3 times. Another followed. The Empress still hadn't moved. Micah bowed once more to Aelith, stepped back, and began to turn. "Wait." He paused. Her voice, quiet but certain, cut through the awestruck chamber. She had spoken. Publicly. Possibly for the first time. "I liked it." Micah smiled. "Me too." The moment didn't last. By the time Micah reached the hallway exit, 2 palace guards blocked his path. Their ceremonial armor gleamed like obsidian mirrors, but their staves were powered and primed. "Logistics Officer Micah Lane," one intoned. "By order of Her Radiance Syraxa IX, you are to be detained for unauthorized contact with the royal bloodline." Micah didn't resist. He simply raised his hands and sighed. "I was hoping we could skip this part." They didn't answer. As they marched him down the corridor, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirrored wall. He looked ordinary. A Terran nobody in a borrowed suit. And yet, He just made history. In the holding chamber, 2 guards remained posted at the entrance. Micah sat on a low bench, alone with his thoughts and the faint, echoing music of the next formal dance, back in the ballroom, without him. It was colder here. Less perfect. He liked it more. Minutes passed. Then the door opened. She entered without preamble. Tall. Statuesque. Wrapped in layered silk armor lined with living biogems. Her crown shimmered with internal light. Empress Saraxa 9. Micah stood but didn't bow. She regarded him with unreadable eyes, black irises with swirling blue threads. Her voice was level. Controlled. You approached her. She was alone. She was hidden. She's not anymore. Silence. You crossed boundaries few would dare. Do you understand the danger of what you did? I wasn't thinking about danger, Micah replied. I was thinking she looked like she'd never been asked. Saraxa's jaw tightened. Just slightly. She is not yours to touch. Not yours to see. She's not an object. She's a person. And maybe it's time someone treated her like one. The Empress stepped closer. No rage. Just cold calculation. You are Terran. Your kind burns fast. You mistake fire for light. Micah met her gaze. Maybe. But we don't leave people in the dark. She stared at him for a long time. Then, quietly, she turned. At sunrise, you will be returned to your delegation. Until then, you remain confined. Micah nodded. Understood. As she reached the doorway, she paused. She smiled. Micah looked up. The Empress didn't turn back. She's never done that before. And then she was gone. Micah sat back down. The music from the ballroom faded. He closed his eyes. Whatever came next, punishment, exile, politics, it didn't matter. Because he'd seen something that couldn't be unseen. Not in her eyes. Not in hers. And not in the Empress, who had just begun to crack. The chamber lights dimmed every few minutes to simulate Athari breathing cycles, a slow, rhythmic pulse designed to relax the mind. It had the opposite effect on Micah. He sat with his back against the wall, arms folded, counting those pulses like heartbeats. 17. The guards hadn't spoken since the Empress left. Neither had he. There was nothing to say that wouldn't make it worse. The door hissed open. This time, it wasn't a guard. It was her. Princess Aelith. She entered alone. No attendants. No royal escort. Just a single thread of white silk trailing behind her as her mechanical limbs clicked softly against the polished floor. Micah stood, startled. You shouldn't be here. I wanted to be. Her voice was steadier than before. Still soft. But no longer afraid of its own sound. The guards didn't move. They weren't blocking her. Micah frowned. They let you in? Aelith tilted her head. My mother didn't stop me. That said more than any proclamation. She approached slowly, like someone testing the strength of new legs. Micah moved to the bench. You want to sit? She hesitated, then nodded. When she lowered herself beside him, he noticed a faint whir of internal servos in her limbs. Everything about her movements had been engineered for silence. Elegance. But not comfort. She broke the silence first. I wasn't supposed to speak tonight. Or move. Or matter. Micah looked at her carefully. Then why did you? Her hands flexed, real skin over a frame of alloy and memory fiber. Because you asked? He smiled. I didn't know it was forbidden. It was, she said simply. But so is being defective. He turned to her fully. Don't call yourself that. It's what they call me. She didn't say it bitterly. Just as fact. My limbs were grown wrong. My voice is late. My spine had to be rebuilt twice. They can call it what they want, Micah said. But you're not wrong. You're real. Aelith blinked. Slowly. You speak like the old Terran poets. Not on purpose. For the first time, she smiled again. I've never been asked to dance, she said. Even as a joke. Micah shrugged. It wasn't a joke. You looked like you wanted to move. So I moved with you. She looked down at her hands. Do you do that often? Break rules? He considered it. Only the stupid ones. Aelith leaned back. My mother says all rules are sacred. Micah exhaled. I've seen enough systems where sacred just means never questioned. She was quiet for a while, studying his face as if it held something she couldn't read yet. Then, I used to think kindness was a type of flaw. He turned toward her again. What do you think now? I think, it feels like I remember something I never had. Outside, the corridor lights pulsed again. Aelith stood. I shouldn't stay long. She'll know. Micah stood as well. You'll get in trouble? I'm always in trouble, she said. Existing seems to cause it. Her words hit harder than she likely intended. She turned, then hesitated. May I ask one thing? Anything. Why didn't you look away? Everyone always does. Micah didn't have to think. Because you looked back. She nodded once, said nothing else, and walked out. The guards didn't stop her. Micah didn't sleep. The next morning, he was released without a word. No charges. No warnings. Just a silent escort to his assigned quarters. By noon, a new envoy arrived. Their orders were clear, asterisk. Avoid further interactions with the royal household. Maintain protocol. Observe only. Asterisk. Micah ignored none of that, and obeyed none of it either. Because later that same day, a small note arrived on his datapad. Asterisk Sun Terrace. 1 hour. Come alone, asterisk. A. The terrace overlooked the shimmering lake, a body of bioluminescent water whose glow changed colors with sound. It was peaceful here. No guards. No nobles. Just wind. And her. Aelith was already there, seated on a low bench with a small tablet in her hands. She looked up as he approached. You came. I was curious, Micah said. Also, no one's threatened me today. Felt weird. She didn't laugh, but her eyes crinkled. I wanted to show you something. She handed him the tablet. It was a poem. Handwritten. In Authori script. He read it, translating the flow in his head. Asterisk she watches from windows carved to framed stars. But never sees herself in any. A visitor offers a mirror. Not polished, just honest. She learns what her shape is made of. Not defect. Not shame. Just light bent differently, asterisk. He looked up. You wrote this? She nodded. Micah was quiet for a moment. Then, gently. It's beautiful. It's not proper, she said. It doesn't follow empire form. Good, he said. Maybe the empire could use less form. For the next week, they met 3 more times. Always quietly. Always in out-of-the-way places. They talked about Earth. About Authari history. About the difference between silence and solitude. She told him about her mother. She wasn't always like this, Aelith said. Once she was kind. Before the crown. What changed her? Aelith didn't answer immediately. Then said, she gave birth to me. Micah didn't accept that. You didn't break her. No, Aelith agreed. But I reminded her she could be broken. That night, Micah looked up at the alien stars and realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about him and her. This was about a crack in an empire. And he had been the stone. Word spread. Whispers filled the palace. That the princess was speaking. Writing. Smiling. That the Terran had touched her, not with hands, but with recognition. Some nobles scoffed. Others grew silent. One even sent a note. Asterisk whatever you did, don't stop. She's becoming, asterisk. But it was inevitable that Saraxa would notice. When she summoned him again, Micah didn't flinch. This time, she met him alone in the Garden of Silence, where Authari emperors went to mourn their dead. She stood beneath a tree whose leaves whispered in genetic tongues. She didn't turn when he approached. She wrote a poem, Saraxa said. I know. She quoted Terran lyrics. She laughed in public. She called herself Light. Micah waited. Saraxa turned, and for the first time, she didn't look regal. She looked tired. I spent my life pruning the wild from this empire, she said. And in one dance you planted something I can't unroot. Micah didn't smile. Maybe it's not wild. Maybe it's alive. She stared at him, long and hard. Don't push her further, she warned. She is still fragile. Micah held her gaze. Or maybe she's stronger than you ever let her be. Saraxa walked away without another word. Micah remained in the garden, alone, as the stars blinked awake. And somewhere inside the palace, a young woman wrote her second poem. This time, she didn't ask permission. Ceremonial days on Mixta Prime began with silence. No speeches. No songs. Just the sound of air circulating through crystal columns, and the slow heartbeat of an empire preparing to perform perfection. Princess Aelith sat motionless at the edge of the reflection pool, her chrome fingers curled into her dress. Her attendants had tried to hide her again, thick veils, heavy robes, but she had refused. This time, she wore white. Simple. Clean. Unmasked? She had written her third poem the night before. It wasn't about mirrors. It was about fire. In the grand hall, the court gathered. More tightly packed than usual, more alert. Something was coming, and every noble felt it in the bones of the palace. Micah stood near the rear of the chamber, this time not as a servant, but as a representative. Not official, yet undeniable. The Terran delegation hadn't wanted him here. The Athari Council had demanded it. But the Empress hadn't refused. She hadn't agreed either. She simply waited. Saraxa Nine sat on the obsidian throne in silence. She'd read her daughter's latest verses. The child was no longer hiding shame in metaphor. She was calling for revolution. I am not the mistake they fear. I am the version they never planned for. And I am not alone. Those words had reached the noble houses before dawn. Some whispered exile. Others demanded a public correction. Saraxa had chosen a third path. Let it play out. Let them see. The orchestra began, same notes, same waltz. But Aelith did not wait for invitation. She entered the chamber through the main arch, unescorted. Heads turned. A few gasps slipped out. She did not stutter. Did not limp. She owned each step with deliberate grace. Micah felt his heart slow. Then quicken. He had never seen her like this, untethered, radiant, terrifying in the way hope always is. She crossed the chamber and stopped at its center. And then she bowed. To him. Micah Lane, she said, her voice clear, mechanical edge softened with human cadence. Will you dance with me again? He stepped forward without hesitation. This time, there was no silence. There was uproar. Nobles shouted. Counselors stood. The chief adjudicator of the High House raised his staff in protest. This is unsanctioned. This is a disruption of order. Micah ignored them. Aelith didn't blink. He took her hand. They began to dance. But it wasn't the Athari form. It was human. Simple. Improvised. Unmeasured. She moved with growing confidence. He followed her lead. Her mechanical limbs spun with elegance. And in her eyes, joy, not stolen, earned, The orchestra faltered. The nobles didn't know whether to leave or bow. At the throne, Saraxa rose. For a moment, everything held its breath. Then she descended the steps. No one moved. Not even the guards. She crossed the chamber, robe trailing behind like smoke. And stood before her daughter. Face to face. Aelith stopped. Micah released her hand. Saraxa studied the girl, not the prosthetics or the posture. The gaze. You've made your statement, the Empress said. Aelith met her eyes. It wasn't a statement. It was truth. You defy centuries of silence. I survived them, Syrax's jaw tightened. You believe this changes everything? It already has, Aelith said. You just haven't caught up yet. Micah watched quietly, hands folded. He didn't speak. This wasn't his moment. Then Syraxa did something no one had seen in 3 reigns. She knelt. One knee to the floor. Not to Micah. To her daughter. Gasps ricocheted through the chamber. 1,000 years of protocol cracked in an instant. I feared what you were, Syraxa whispered. Because I feared what I had become. Aelith placed her hand on her mother's shoulder. You can still become something else. Syraxa looked up, eyes shining, not with tears, but clarity. Then teach me. The ceremony was never completed. The records show a moment of cultural redefinition. Instead. Later, they called it the turning waltz. It became illegal, for a time, to reference it. Then it became canon. In the weeks that followed, changes rippled outward. The council recognized Aelith as heir apparent. A new doctrine was drafted, one that made room for voices outside the genetic elite. Some nobles resisted. Some resigned. But most adapted. Because Aelith spoke not like an empress. She spoke like someone who had danced. And that made all the difference. Micah left shortly after. By request. Not exile, respect, He and Aelith met one last time, beneath the light-veined trees of the southern garden. Is this goodbye? She asked. No, he said. It's the space before the next step. You taught me to move. You taught yourself, he said. I just reminded you that you could. A pause. Then she asked, did you ever dance like that on Earth? Micah smiled. Never with a princess. She leaned in and kissed his cheek. No audience. No scandal. Just truth. As he boarded the Terran ship, he turned once. She stood on the platform above, no longer veiled. And for the first time, she wasn't alone. Far above, the stars blinked silently. The galaxy hadn't changed overnight. But it had started. Because one human saw what others ignored. And one girl stepped forward when the world told her to sit still. And they danced,